What is going on, you beautiful people? Today we're going to be talking about Claudia in Tower Fantasy. We're going to talk about her kit, best teams, best build and matrices, best simulacra trait to put on her ascensions, and if she's worth it or not to pull, especially for those of you that are saying, Lynn is coming, Lynn is going to power creep Claudia, don't get Claudia, just wait for Lynn. If you find any of my guides useful, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Follow my Twitch if you're a Twitch person or just want to hang out with me. And without further ado, let's get into it. Alright guys, so after playing Claudia for a while, the best attack string that I like is launching up into the air and then going like this and then possibly ending with a plunge attack instead of just normal attacks on the ground like you're seeing right now. So what that means is if you're going to DPS with Claudia, you got to understand that you're going to launch up enemies in the air and then you're going to use your stamina in order to do your DPS. So your two ways of launching enemies in the air is either you hold your normal attack, or you can lead off with a dodge attack and then you do your thing there. Her elemental skill looks like it does AoE damage, but it just picks 5 targets and just slashes them. If there's not 5 targets, she's gonna do a total of 5 hits and she'll pick one of those targets to do more than one attack. And if you are doing more than one attack on one target, it's gonna decrease damage after the first hit when you're hitting the same target. Right here, as you can see, there's targets all over me, and if I do my skill, I'll pick 5 of them. It chose to attack the last one more than once. Now for that final slash of the elemental skill, you actually do not have to wait for it. You can actually animation cancel and do your normal attack strings while that animation is playing out. So let me show you right here. And we are able to just, do your DPS. You don't have to wait for the animation. And it's pretty good. Alright, her discharge ability is a really good one. It's actually one of her highest percentages. It's going to lunge you forward to the enemy and it's going to leave like a tornado of swords slashes there. But it can kind of be tricky to aim it because sometimes it goes past the enemy and you're just not using its full potential. Either like you have to be up close and personal to them in order to just, shove it in their face. Or what I find success sometimes is just doing it mid-air. So doing a jump and then using the discharge. And actually guys, her skill and her discharge, since they have a lot of high attack percentage and her shatter is not the worst. Well, not pretty good, but decent. She's decent at shattering shields. So if you are able to combine her skill and her discharge, you can actually start picking at the shield of the enemies, especially in like a little AoE from her discharge. And the last thing I'll say about her kit is despite being a DPS weapon, she does not give you a crit stat for your whole character. It really doesn't make a difference. It's probably just 1 or 2% crit rate max, but just something to note. And if you really want to DPS with Claudia, you have to take advantage of her discharge. You're going to have to adjust your rotations. Even though Claudia is your main weapon charger, you can use that to your advantage and then switch to another weapon before your bar meter or whatever fills up. And that way when your discharge is ready to go, you can switch into Claudia because her discharge ability pumps out a lot of damage. Either that or you can leave Claudia in there to charge up all your weapons, but then you're going to have to use the relic swap technique in order to switch back into Claudia to use her discharge. But this is only if you want to DPS with her, and also if you don't need to use like a discharge ability from another weapon like Meryl or maybe King in order to shield break enemies. And especially if you're like at Ascension 1 or 0 and you don't plan to DPS with her, then really she's only going to be a weapon charger on your team. She's probably only going to use her weapon skill, maybe do a couple of aerial normal attacks and then switch out. And then at that point you don't have to worry about your rotations. She's just going in there for a bit. Okay, now let's move on to her build and her matrices. Standard and potentially FTP. I know, these are kind of hard to get. You have a low percentage, but at least they're farmable now that we have Artificial Island. You can farm the dragon and get your Samir piece. And these are pretty decent DPS matrices that you can put on Claudia, especially if you want her to be more of the main DPS. If you don't have Samir or Crow, but you have one or the other, a 2-piece Shiro is decent because she is going to be out there doing her skill, her discharge, and it can increase her shatter, which turns her from a decent shatter to a better shatter, I guess. But if you're going to be hitting enemies with shields, and especially if their health is more than 50%, you might as well take advantage of this. So this is a decent option that you can put on Claudia. And of course, Claudia's signature matrix is a good option for her as well. But the thing is, guys, this is whale territory. I managed to get S3, but I'm like, I don't feel like spending on the freaking matrices. So for me, it's not worth it. So I can just imagine for you F2P people, it's even more not worth it. This is whale territory on the matrice banner. I don't think it's worth it to get the 2-piece. I mean, I know I said that, you're going to be doing most of your attacks in the air, but if you are able to get a 4-piece, it's going to help the whole team with their skill cooldowns. And it's overall like a really good support matrice that you can put on somebody on the team. But I just don't think it's worth it. You're better off with the other matrices that I listed before. And this is the 4-star matrices that you put on your Claudia or any type of DPS as copium because you're waiting to get gold matrices. Last matrice I will suggest, especially if you're just using her as a weapon charger or a support for her A1, is the pepper set. She's already a great charger, so just adding 10% more or potentially 15% more if you're able to get all the stars, it's just going to increase her weapon charge like crazy. And guys, for the awakening trade, the best one I'm going to give it to is Tsubasa. It's the easiest one to build up and just keep, especially for a long fight. You're always going to be hitting, you're always going to be doing stuff. So Tsubasa is the best and easiest one that you can take advantage in order to increase your damage. Another great option is Samira's awakening trade. The thing is, you can't get hit. I did try Shiro's, guys, but at the end of the day, I didn't like it because of this cooldown. This 16-second cooldown is just terrible. If it didn't have a cooldown, this would be the best one. You do it all the time. But the thing is, it does have a cooldown. I would even accept like 5 seconds. If it had a 5-second cooldown, sure. Now that I think about it, I see the 8 seconds. You get it for 8 seconds. The cooldown is 16 seconds. So I guess there's a downtime of 8 seconds only. But still, that's too much. I wish the cooldown was 10 seconds. So that way there's only 2 seconds of cooldown. If that's even how it works. I may just be wrong right now. But the thing is, the cooldown, I don't like it. Which is why I like Tsubasa's awakening trade better. Because there is no cooldown. And it's going to help you overall, give you more damage, especially in a long fight. Now for the teams, you already know you're going to pair her with Shiro. Shiro's the only other SSR that we have that's physical. Shiro at Ascension 0, oh my gosh, that's kind of copium. Like, you have to at least get 1 star. 1 star is going to help you increase damage and shattering within the full blooms. So it's also going to help Claudia's damage and shattering output. And their synergy is just amazing together. Most of the time, I just find myself switching between these two. And they're both going to help each other keep the grievous effect on the enemies, increasing your overall damage by 20%. Now, what happens if you don't have Shiro? I think Bailing is a decent option, especially if you have her max stars, which at this point, like, it's kind of guaranteed with the amount of nucleuses they give us in this game. The reason why I'm suggesting Bailing is because of her Ascension 5, where her dodge attacks will inflict grievous on the targets for 7 seconds. You can kind of look at this as like a Tsubasa A1, but for physical teams. Or actually any teams, honestly, because the grievous effect is going to add 20% extra damage to those enemies from your characters. And it's only for like a complete FTP option, and like for some reason you don't have Shiro. Even though you should probably only be pulling on Claudia if you have Shiro, because there's not that many DPSs in the game. But if you're like a waifu or a meta gamer, then I can see why you pull Claudia. So worst case scenario, Bailing is there to help you out. And you're probably thinking, well, what about her Ascension 6 Hydra Sam? Does that 30% crit rate and 50% crit damage carry over to like Claudia? Well, let me answer your question right now by showing you this gameplay. Alright guys, so we're gonna test to see if Bailing can actually transfer this crit rate and crit damage to any of the other weapons. But first we got to figure out how much we're doing just by Grievous by itself. So let's go ahead and test it on some animals. It sounds kind of wrong, right? Oh well. Okay. There's my crit, 6800, 6800, non-crit 4500. And that is with Grievous. Now Grievous, we have 5000. 5200. Yep, 5000 is our crit. 5,000 is our crit, and 3,500 is our non-crit. That is the extra 20% damage difference. Now we use Bailing. The same thing. No extra crit rate, no extra crit damage. And then for Bailing, she's doing almost 3k per crit. And then we do this. Now she's doing 6,000 per crit hit. So basically from 50% to 100% crit damage, meaning a 100% increase, twice the amount of damage. It makes sense seeing those numbers right there. One more time right here, non-crit 2000, crit is about 2900 max. We do the dodge attack and now we have an increase in the damage by like 100%. So now that we know that, I can't completely suggest Bailing. The 6th Ascension only affects Bailing's damage. I guess you can still inflict Grievous on other enemies on command without waiting to charge up your weapons. And you can also keep resetting Grievous effect, especially if you have Shiro's skill on the field where it's just consistently doing damage. You can switch to Bailing and just keep resetting the Grievous effect. But as far as helping the rest of the team, might as well just find somebody better, honestly. For the 3rd slot, it can be anyone you think that has a good discharge. If you need more shattering on your team, a great option is Meryl or King. Their discharge abilities are really good at, shattering those shields, and King's gonna provide overall consistent damage because those flame scythes are gonna do ticking damage, or they're just gonna do a lot of damage over time. Whereas Meryl is gonna do a huge chunk of damage as well and knock off their shield by a pretty decent amount. But Meryl's discharge ability also provides utility ability by trapping bosses in her little frozen domain, or whatever you want to call it, her crystal cave. I think that's what it's called. A third option is Nemesis, because I feel like a lot of people have Nemesis and she's pretty decent, but I think you really only need her if like your team and joint operations are not healing you, or you need more heals on your team. I guess you can switch to her to provide that little healing you can get. And her discharge ability is not that bad. You know, you are slowing the enemies down by 70% for 5 seconds. So it's a pretty decent discharge ability. Honestly, whatever you have, whatever weapon you have, you can pick what you want. It's up to you for the discharge abilities. But I think the ones that I mentioned are pretty much kind of like the best in a way. I mean, you can also put Tsubasa for more damage buffs, but it just depends on you guys. But in this part of the teams, do give me feedback. Like, what do you want to see? Do you want me to test out like every team, or what do you want to see? Just please let me know in the comments. I love your all's feedback, and I look at the analytics all the time, see what you guys are watching the most. And I know team section is one of the ones you guys like to watch. So please give me feedback on what to do, what to show, so that way I can make better guides in the future. And the last one, I will say, if you want to do like a full physical team with Bailing, Shiro, Claudia, I think if you really want to make this team work, you kind of need Ascension 3 Shiro. Since you're not going to have any other Shatter weapon on the team, you really need Shiro to be the main Shatterer on the team. I mean, Claudia can support with her skill and her discharge, but overall, after playing this team, I think the cooldown from Shiro's elemental skill is too much. Like, you need to reset it somehow, and Ascension 3 is the best way to just kind of improve your rotations, your damage, and your shatter capability in this team. And so those are the teams I suggest if you want to make Claudia the DPS. But if you want Claudia to be a support, well, then you need Ascension 1. And Ascension 1 Claudia just kind of replaces the role of Ascension 1 Tsubasa. So whatever teams you're using Ascension 1 Tsubasa on, or you were planning to use Ascension 1 Tsubasa on, if you get Ascension 1 Claudia, just replace Tsubasa with Claudia. They provide the same role, except Ascension 1 Claudia can provide a bigger boost than Ascension 1 Tsubasa. So if you have Tsubasa on like a Frost team, you can replace Claudia with her. Or if you're using Tsubasa on your Volt team to get that extra damage boost, then just replace her with Claudia. So now let's go ahead and jump and talk about Claudia's start levels, ascensions, constellations, whatever you want to call them. Alright guys, so if you saw my Ascension 0 showcase of Claudia, you know I wasn't able to complete this joint operation because I had like bad teammates, and I guess I was just bad too. And I told you all I was going to redeem myself, and I did. So in this joint operation right here, guys, I'm basically like last in the leaderboards as far as damage because they all got a head start and I was just doing something else. And as you can see, there's players with Ascension 3 Samir and Ascension 3 King. So that is what I'm going up against, and I am last on the leaderboards going into this boss. And after some nice gameplay and killing this boss right here, you can see that I'm actually tied for first place with 5.5 million. And this is with Ascension 0 Claudia, the same team I had from that video before. I don't really have a good third slot, so I have Nemesis for now. So basically all the damage is coming from my Shiro and my Claudia. And then after we fight this boss lady right here, we can see that in the end, guys, I am victorious. I was the one that did the most damage with 12 million. And from last place all the way to first place with Ascension 0 Claudia, I was able to beat Ascension 3 Samir and Ascension 3 King. Maybe they have worse equipment than me. Maybe they were just playing bad. I don't know. All I want you to know is that if you want to DPS with Ascension 0 Claudia, it is possible. You're just going to have to play good and have good equipment. It's still going to be kind of copium, but it's not impossible to do. Now, when you go to Ascension 1 Claudia, you definitely do have a huge increase in damage, and you're able to compete with some of the whales out there. Ascension 2 is going to give us an increase in attack growth, which we can do it right now. We're going to go from like 401 to 513. Pretty good. Nothing too crazy about that. Ascension 3, when hitting a target with a skill or discharge skill, apply 1 stack of war wounds to the target, increase incoming physical damage, and shatter from physical weapons by 10%. I'm going to lock this right now, but this is going to increase our overall damage from Shiro and Claudia by 10%. And it's going to increase the shatter by 15%. So it's just kind of like a boost, especially if you have like C0 Shiro, or for me, I have Ascension 2 Shiro. So where I would get the 15% from her Ascension 3, when I unlock Claudia's right now, I'm going to get 10% from her. And of course, it would be better if I had Ascension 3 Shiro, but this not only helps Shiro, it helps Claudia and any other physical weapon that we will have on this team. So still not making Claudia a main DPS, just giving more damage for your physical team and more shatter. 4 stars is HP growth. She's DPS. I don't know why we're not getting double DPS growth. I don't know why we need more HP, but it is what it is. Ascension 5, hitting targets with skills or discharge skills grants skill damage boost, which increases all weapon skill damage by 20% for 25 seconds. This is just screaming Shiro. If you already watched my guide, my Shiro guide, a huge amount of Shiro's damage comes from her skill. So this Ascension 3 is just kind of screaming at you like, use Shiro, use her. And if you're able to have Ascension 3 Shiro, which resets her skill, okay, you're just gonna do a crazy amount of damage together. But this is not just for Shiro. There's other characters in the game whose weapon skills do a lot of damage. So just keep in mind that this only increases skill damage and not overall damage. Kind of niche, but whatever. Ascension 6. Okay, now this is where Claudia kind of becomes the main DPS. Skills hitting the same target no longer have reduced damage. Like I mentioned earlier about her skill, it reduces damage if we're hitting the same target. Now it doesn't. So this is kind of telling you, all right, use Claudia on bosses, on single target enemies, and go ahead and don't be afraid to use that weapon skill. And after using Gurren Blade skills or discharge abilities, all targets with war wounds within 8 meters gain another stack of war wounds. Whereas one gives us 10% for 15 seconds, now we're gonna have 2, and we're gonna have 20% extra physical damage and extra shatter from our weapons. And I don't know if there's a limit here because it just says after using Gurren's Blades or Discharge, all targets with war wounds within 8 meters gain another stack of war wounds. I know it only lasts for 15 seconds, but if you do have Ascension 3 Shiro and you reset her cooldown and maybe do a Fantasia to get another Discharge, are you able to get like 4 or even 5 stacks? I really don't know because like the war wounds acts like a debuff, not like an actual buff, so you really can't see it on your screen. It's kind of hard to tell, but if you guys know, if you guys see it, or if you know something, please let me know in the comments. I'll update it in the pinned comment. But now that we've finished talking about her star levels, guys, it is time for me to go to Ascension 3. It's time, boys. Oh yeah, look at that skin. Let's go. Let's view it. Oh, buddy. All right. Let's go. I have ascended, boys. All right, guys. So for best relics, especially for DPS Claudia, you already know you have to have the space-time rift. Gonna gather up all the enemies except for the final slash. So the more enemies will get hit by her final slash. And especially if you're pairing her with Shiro, well, then you need all those enemies grouped up together. That way Shiro can do the most amount of damage in her short AoE. And of course, the other good one is the hologram projector to do even more damage. But if you're like me and you don't have any of them, which one should you use? I love using this guy right here. Once you get advancement 2, after the shield breaks, you increase your final damage by 20% for 10 seconds. It's great. There's no animation, and I love using it with my Claudia and any other team. The other one you can use is this cube for 10% damage, but the thing is, it has an animation, so it kind of sucks. But you use what you gotta use. And if you don't want to use the cube, and like how I talked about earlier with Claudia, how you want to use her discharge, but you need to relic swap, you can use this hand cannon, especially for its utility, and this will allow you to relic swap, or any other one that lets you relic swap, whatever you want. It's up to you, but this is only if you're DPSing with Claudia and you want to, use her discharge consistently. So now let's talk about if she's worth it or not. If you want to build a physical DPS team, then you're going to need Claudia. She is the second SSR physical character we have gotten on global, and unlike the CN server, she has physical resonance. But nevertheless, in order to get full value from Claudia, you're going to want to get her Ascension 1. This kind of means that she is not free-to-play friendly, and maybe you're better off just pulling one copy and waiting until she gets on the standard banner and then buying her duplicate with black gold. And now I want to talk a little bit about skipping Claudia in order to save for Lyn, because in the CN version, Lyn replaces Claudia as a support. Now I'm not against people saying to skip Claudia in order to save for Lyn, because if you are a meta slave, and assuming we are going to get the same Lyn that China server has right now, then yeah, go ahead and do it. But let me share with you my opinion on why Claudia could still be a good pickup. First and foremost, we have seen how Global is trying to balance characters. We have seen the Tsubasa nerfs, we have seen the Nemesis nerfs, we have seen the Frigg nerfs, and then we have seen the Claudia buffs. This kind of shows us that Global is trying to make all characters viable and reduce the power creep and dominance of future characters. So maybe Lyn in the future will get nerfed because of her dominance and usage rate in a Chinese meta, but maybe not like a huge nerf to the point where Claudia will be better. Maybe just like a little nerf that will help other characters like Claudia not seem like trash when compared to Lyn. This is all speculation, of course, but in the end, you have to choose what characters and weapons you enjoy the most, not what other people are telling you to pull and being a slave to the meta. Pull and play with what you like in order to keep you playing the game, not waiting for the future. Anyways, you can let me know what you think about that take on skipping Claudia and waiting for Lyn. Please like and subscribe if you found this video helpful. I love y'all very much, and remember, waifu over meta, and I'll see you all in the next video.